Record. Okay, we are recording.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Keith Howell, and this will be the third part of our series on Kemet, the first great civilization. And I hope you enjoy, become inspired, and just take what you learn, or you may have already heard this before, but continue to process it and give it to our people, give it to the world, because we definitely need it, particularly our Black children. Last week, we talked about going up the Nile River, the beginning of civilization, and we said it started at the foot of the White Nile River, at the top of Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, and then it flowed northward because the Nile River is unique. Like the Amazon, it flows up instead of south, instead of down. So it flows up into the Mediterranean Sea near Europe. It is 4,165 miles long, the Nile Valley civilization, and it has two great rivers, the White Nile, which flows into the Blue Nile. Last week, we touched on the Kushites, and we really didn't get into them. And I did some additional research, and the Kushites, which are the first people, are very neglected. We hear about Nubians, Ethiopians, Punt, Egyptians. We know the indigenous name Kemet, but it all comes from the Kush. And this would be right around here. See if I had this right. Can you see this? We start right here. Right around here is where civilization starts. We see the earliest bones, fossils found in this region, and civilization is going to go up and flourish all the way here. Now, this whole time, one time, the 25th dynasty, this was the Kushite Empire, the entire stretch. And that was the last dynasty that we dominated as Black people. I just want to tell you a little bit about the Kushites, and then I want to show you some pictures of our indigenous ancestors, how gifted they were in the culture, and we're going to put to rest any myth that these people were not Black. We're going to show that they were definitely Black. So there were four sources that tell us about the Kushite. First, you have the first source would be the Bible, where it says the sons of Ham were Black, and his sons, there's four of them. The first one would be Cush, Egypt, Punt, and then Canaan. Professor Manu Ampum, A History of African Civilizations, informs us of three other sources. I'm going to quote from him. A second category of evidence is the Egyptian records, which consist of various texts and tomb scenes. There are about 40 people with the titles of, quote, king, son of Cush, viceroyal Cush, or lieutenant to Cush. And in the 25th and 26th dynasties, the Kushite title, quote, God's wife of Amen, or divine consort, a powerful high priestess, were common titles. And then he says, additionally, we have the travel records of the high official Harkoth, which is 2,200 years before the Christian era, and Queen Hatshepsut, which is 1,500 years before the Christian era, as they took long, peaceful trading voyages to Kush and other lands. The third category, he continues, is the archaeological evidence, which consists of the many artifacts at archaeological sites in the Sudan, such as temples, tombs, pyramids, and residential sites. There are several museums in the Sudan which house artifacts from antiquities, but many Kushite artifacts are now in various Western museums since the raiding of Kushite pyramids in the 1830s by the Italian treasure hunter Giuseppe Ferlini and the early 20th century excavations of George Reisner. Now, just to make sure you know where they're talking about, the Sudan is right here. Sudan is right there. And Hasheput is reigning from up here. So they're going all the way down, taking expeditions. And you can find, buried in the sand, you can find all these artifacts about the Kushite Empire in the Sudan desert. And then the last one would be, he goes on to talk about the Greco-Roman sources, Strabo, Homer, Herodotus, who talk about the Kushites. They talk about the color of their skin, and they talk about how great they are. Sometimes we get, I know I did for a while, I get confused with the term Ethiopian. And so I want to elaborate on that just for a second. So depending on what period of time, when the Greeks come into Africa, they call all black people, they call the continent Ethiopia. And then it's broken down. At some point, they're going to call Nubian Kemet Ethiopia. But then later, Ethiopia becomes synonymous with the Kushite Empire. And then Ethiopia breaks off on its own. So depending on what epoch in time you're talking about, you'll get the clarity of the names. Any questions before I go on? Comments? All right, so what I want to show now are the color, the race of the Kemetic people in its height, the 25 dynasties when we dominated. Here we have these beautiful hairstyles. Look at the culture. Black people, thick nose, thick lips. Look at the crowns, locks, woolly hair. You can only do these styles with woolly hair. Then we have a cook in the 5th dynasty. We have an army, 40 armed soldiers. Then we have them enjoying themselves fishing in the Nile River. We also have them having a good time in the village, partying, talking, engaging with each other. Then we have women, Egyptian women making perfume. Look at the blackness of them. Look at the hairstyles. Another Egyptian woman or Kemetic woman. And then another one with the various styles. Then we have a ruler, Pharaoh Thutmose III, son of a Sudanese woman, which is another word for Kushite. Thick nose. Look at those lips. Then we have the Watusi hairstyle. This is one of the most famous kings of pharaohs of Kemet, Ramesses. Now you can only do that style if you have woolly hair. So this is a modern day African, and that's our brother, our ancient ancestor. We have another Nubian woman, black woman. Various styles. Look at this. That's today. This is Kemetic, or Nubian. Then we have some wigs. We have peasant prisoners. Here we have another exhibit. And then somebody we're going to talk about in a second, one of the greatest rulers of the Kushite Empire, 25th dynasty, King Tuharqa. Our brother, Dr. Yusef Ben Johannet, in Black Man of the Nile, is going to give us a chronology about the 25th dynasty, which is going to be the last dynasty that we actually control. The first brother is going to be Kashta, and he is from 538 before the Christian era. In about 750 BC, Kashta made a pilgrimage to the Amun temple at Wasat, which is going to be Lower Kemet. And he's coming from Napata, which is the first cataract or the first waterfall near the Sudan. And he's going to unify Lower and Upper Kemet. He's going to unify the two lands when he makes this pilgrimage. And then he's succeeded by a brother by the name of Pianki. In this great classic book, Intro to African Civilization, Jonathan Jackson tells us about the prosperity of this brother, about his love for animals, particularly horses. And above all, he's going to show his love for God. I quote, give me a second here. Messengers came forth and descended bearing everything beautiful to behold, gold, every splendid costly stone, clothing in the chest, and the diadem which was upon his head, the urias which inspired fear of him without ceasing during many days. On visiting Namlet's stables, Pianki was distressed by the malnutrition visited on the horses during the siege of the city. Quote, His Majesty proceeded to the stable of the horses and the quarters of the foals. When he saw that they had suffered hunger, he said, I swear as God loves me, it is more grievous in my heart that my horses have suffered hunger than any evil deed that is done in the prosecution of thy desire. And then we have a quote or some comments about the next ruler of the Kushites, which is going to be Shabaka. And Peggy Brooks, from this distinguished collection of Kemetic stories compiled by Ivan van Sertima, she's going to give you some more information about this empire and particularly Shabaka. She states he ruled for 14 years and is credited with erecting and refurbishing temples and maintaining the language of the inscriptions of the temples from the Old Kingdom, as well as the architecture of these buildings. This is an enormous contribution to our later understanding of the history, particularly the religious history of Egypt preceding the Nabatean rulership. Kitchen, so she's quoting another archaeologist, his name is Kitchen, also credits numerous accomplishments and contributions to this Shabaka. Here is another article, another author. Rawlinson credits him with the construction of hydraulic irrigation systems in Egypt and described him as a ruler with great humanity and deep respect for Egyptian customs and religious beliefs. And I got to tell you, audience, when I read about these two people, I thought about later Mansa Musa making his pilgrimage to Mecca and Askia Muhammad Touré's pilgrimage to Mecca. How they were both humane, they were generous. Mansa Musa caused an inflation. He gave out gold and deflated the value of gold. He gave out so much. This year, I was really blessed with teaching the entire African diaspora in Newark. And I had a brother from Mali. And he said his grandfather told him orally the history and mentioned, he said a big dissertation on Mansa Musa. He said the only problem with Mansa Musa was when he did that, the Arabs and other people descended on Africa and stole from us. It just opened up the world. Did some research on Mansa Musa. Today, he would have more money than Bill Gates. That's how powerful he was. And so, but I was thinking about them when I was doing this research on these Kushite, the 25th dynasty rulers. And then we have Taharqa, who you saw earlier. Here's Taharqa again. He's going to make some great accomplishments. And we have our distinguished brother, my elder, who's passed away, Brother Cheek Anta Diop, in the African Origins of Civilization. He tells us the contributions that Taharqa gave us. He says, the economic, cultural, and especially the architectural renaissance was strengthened by the construction of such monuments as the column of Taharqa incarnate, the statues of Mentum-Hat and Amen artists. Taharqa intervened in Asia in an effort to regain Egypt's international prestige. And finally, the last person we have is Brother Tanutaman. He's going to be the last person of the 25th dynasty. And I want to go back to Brother Sheikh Diop again. And he tells us in 661 before the Christian era, Ashurbanipal attacked Egypt or Kemet and pillaged the city of Thebes. Tanutaman escaped to Napata. The fall of the most venerable city of all antiquity aroused deep emotion in the world of that time and marked the end of the Nubian Sudanese or the Kushite or 25th Kushite Ethiopian dynasty. That date also marked the decline of Black political supremacy in antiquity and in history. Egypt gradually fell under foreign domination. End of quote, Sheikh Diop. And so from there you have the Persians, the Greeks, the Romans, and in the 7th century, the Arabs take over, who still control it today. Any comments, questions as we move on?
The four that you mentioned earlier, the Kushite Empire in the Sudan, the desert. You said Ethiopia. Wait a minute, hold up. Wait a minute. Well, no, you mentioned the Bible. Four sons of Ham.
Yeah.
What were their names? Cush, Egypt, and
Egypt, Punt, and Canaan.
you say Punt? Did you say Punt?
Oh, P-U-N-T.
Okay, I thought so. And who? The last one?
Canaan, C-A-N-A-A-N. And my good
like the
friend,
land of Canaan? Like the land of Canaan?
Yeah, well, you know, it's funny you're asking that because my good friend Talia was talking to her about it, and she said, you know, you need to start doing some research on Punt. And I said, you know what? Yeah, I never even really got into that. And even Canaan, I need to see what that connection is.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's going to be my probably next week. I'm going to jump on that. But those are Black people.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? So let us now talk about the first family of Kemet. It's a Kemetic legend. It's the story of Asar, Aset, and Heru. When the Greeks take over, they're going to change that name Asar to Osiris, Aset to Isis, and Heru to Horus. This is a picture of the first family. Okay? And they have people fanning them, helping them. Here is Asar, Aset. This is going to be Heru, and I'm going to explain this to you. Okay? Oh, by the way, a brother bought a picture. He said this was Shabaka. I bought this about 2 years ago up in Brooklyn. And this is how he drew Shabaka. So The story of Asar, Set, and Heru is the very first recorded history of man, of a holy family. The Trinity, Immaculate Conception, virgin birth, and resurrection. By every account, Asar is recognized as the king who puts all the land together and unites Upper and Lower Kemet. Again, we're gonna unite all of this. Well, this is Kemet, but we're gonna go all the way down to that other map, which was Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. Remember, this is a legend now. Asar is powerful. He decides to leave Kemet, the continent, we know of Africa. Dr. Yusuf Camden tells us Akabu land of the blacks, and he goes to visit other places. He leaves his wife, Queen Aset, in charge. His brother, Set, becomes upset, mad, and plots to kill him when he comes back because he did not put him in charge of the land. So he gets 33 of his homies, his partners. They concoct this plan to assassinate Asar. They say, we're going to throw a party for you. It's your birthday. And so when he comes to the party, they spike the punch. He drinks the punch, he gets drunk, and they cut him up into 14 pieces. And then Set becomes ruler of the land. Set, his wife, is livid. She don't know what to do. She cries and she cries. Some of her supporters say, well, let's see if we can resurrect him. They threw the 14 pieces of him into the Nile River. She goes with her friends and canvasses the Nile River, and they find 13 pieces. But they can't find the 14th piece, which is the phallus. And so they want to create a phallus, which represents life, to bring him back. And they come up with this. This is known in the Greek as the obelisk. Proper name is the Tekron, T-E-K-R-E-N-Y. I say Tekron. This is the first usage for this. It's constructed to bring back Asar, or as the Greeks say, Osiris. We're going to get into this later, the other uses for this. Back to the story. She gets up, she's still upset. She's crying out to God, oh my God, I want to have a son. And she immaculately conceives a miracle, the son called Heru. Heru grows up and sees the land being destroyed because of his uncle Set, who is evil, who is Jinn, who is Satan. And he avenges to battle him, to fight him. And when he fights him, he wins. But before he wins, he loses his eyes. His eyes are right here. It's called the eye of Horus. Remember, in Kemetic language, Horus is Heru. But the Greeks come and they change it to Horus. So this is the eye of Horus. But God puts the eyes back together. And he goes up and he's defeated Satan, Set. Now he goes up into heaven. He flies up as a falcon. Trying to show you, where's my paper at? He flies up as a falcon, comes back, and he rules with his father, Physically, he rules. His father, Asar, rules in the heavenlies or the underworld. This is what Heru becomes when he goes to get his father, the falcon. This is Heru. This was Asar and the set prior to Asar being killed. The resurrected father and his son become co-regents of Kemet and her people. Heru rules the physical world, and Asar rules the spiritual realm in the afterlife. Following the precedent established by the first family of Kemet, every succeeding king was given an Heru name upon receiving his crown. The new king pledged to emulate Heru's values and principles throughout his rule. If he ruled fairly, the king could expect to live eternally as a resurrected Asar in the afterlife. This ideal became the model for life and death for every ruler and every citizen of Kemet, and was later integrated into the traditions and beliefs of her many conquerors. Now, I want to go back to Aset, or as the Greeks call her, Isis. Remember, we talked about how she found 13, she eventually found 13 of the 14 pieces of her husband's body during a period of 10 weeks. Aset literally remembered Asar as she found each severed body part. She washed each part of Asar's body, anointed them with oils, and then wrapped the entire body in bandages. Aset created the first mummy in Kemetic history. It took her 70 days to find, reassemble, anoint, and embalm her husband. Thus, 70 days became the period for the mummification process that Kemetic priests would follow for the next 3,000 years.
So
Question.
the mummification process is really based on how you can say it, a story,
Yes.
because it's obviously it's not something that really happened, but so okay, I can see that. And that story crossed borders and lines, the
Yep.
same story, and was integrated into the conqueror's concept of religious ideology and or rebirth.
Yes.
Thank you. That's
Thank you.
interesting.
Any other comments, question?
Mm.
Because Sister Farrakhan, we want to go deeper into that. I just want to say at this point, so in Kemet and what I've done in my life, they integrate everything. You really can't explain one part without getting to the other. And you're going to see this as we move along. So the next thing we're going to talk about is that eye of Horus. Now I'm gonna try to go slow and make sure you, I shouldn't say that. If you just have any comments, questions, let me know, for clarification. The eye of Horus. Again, the falcon. This is the third eye. Right here. Now watch this. It's also right here. It's your brain. The third eye is in your brain. Third eye, it's your inner eye. This is where you get your creativity, your visions, your dreams. It's where I can see what you can't see, or you can see what I can't see. It's trash to someone else, but it's greatness to you. That's the inner eye. And it's found in the pineal gland. The pineal gland is surrounded by the pituitary gland and the thalamus, all in your brain. Everybody looking at this, we got one of these. Let me explain before I get into the pineal gland. This gland, pituitary, and the thalamus. Give me a second. Let me start with the pineal gland. Let me start here. So the pineal gland produces and regulates some hormones, including melatonin, which is melanin. Melanin has many functions, and it is jet black. People of color have huge amounts of it. The darker your skin, the more melanin you have. Remember last week, Cheikh Diop proved that the ancient Kemetic people were black when he went into the mummies. And he secreted all this melanin out of them, which is proof that they were black. What else does this gland do? It has a concentration, the highest concentration of energy in the body. It's pine cone shaped like a pyramid. It's shaped like a pyramid. Is associated with enlightenment and immortality. Kemetic people revealed this story by removing the glands, the pineal gland, preserved it during the process of mummification. They took it out and preserved it. That's how powerful it was. That's how important it is. In a book published a couple months ago, a magazine article called The Conscious Lifestyle magazine, two authors, Matua Chia and Joyce Fong, give us information today about the pineal gland, which our ancestors knew thousands of years ago. They state the pineal gland opens the third eye of inner vision, insight, and wisdom. Research indicates that the pineal gland and retina, R-E-T-I-N-A, your eye, across a wide range of animal species suggests that the two organs share evolutionary and developmental paths. Frogs and lampreys have pineal eyes as well as the Trutera. This is what our Kemetic ancestors tapped into thousands of years ago. And this article was called Opening the Third Eye, Powerful Ancient Practices for Activating the Pineal Gland and Expanding Consciousness. Any questions?
It's interesting because when I was young and crazy, 12, 13, 14, my grandmother used to say to me, "Okay, girl, you wait till your third eye come open."
Oh, wow.
That was her favorite saying, wait till that third eye come open. And I used to think to myself when I was younger, much younger, that I'm gonna get a third eye in the middle of my forehead, you know? And then when I became a little early, like in my 20s, I ran across the book called The Third Eye.
Okay.
There's a book called The Third Eye, which was a good book. So, you know, those old folks, they carried wisdom. I believe they carry that ancient wisdom in their DNA. They evolved in their minds. They carry that wisdom, because she used to say that quite often when I did something stupid. And she said, well, wait till your third eye come open. You'll understand then.
Yeah.
You know, that inner eye.
Yes.
Mhm.
Has anybody seen the movie Antoine Fisher?
Oh, yeah, I have it. Yeah.
That's the
I
third
have
eye activated there. Beginning of the
Oh,
movie, he has that dream.
yes,
He's just as confused. He don't know what's going on in his life.
yes, yes.
And he wakes up, right before he wakes up, he sees all these black people, grandparents, people from slavery. And he sees all this food. You don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And he's messing up in the Navy. He goes to Denzel Washington, who wrote and directed. This was his first movie as a director. And Antoine Fisher's a true story. But he unravels all his problems. And everything he unravels was in the dream. Third eye. At the end of the film, Denzel tells him, listen, I'm not your daddy. I know you want to stay with me. We know you lost your father, but you never know who your mother was because he was a foster child. You gotta go, you gotta find where your mother is so you can move on, go to the next level in life. He fights it. Then he goes, he meets his mom. She's terrible. She's ashamed. He walks away and you figure that's the end. But meanwhile, an aunt from his father's side has hooked up something for him. He goes back to her house and his girlfriend opens the door and everybody says, surprise. It says all these people in his family he never knew. I'm talking cousins, it's everybody, all ages. And he's like slapping five. And then he goes to the back and he opened this door, it's the dining room. And there's all this food and all the elders are there. And it's a black woman that he saw in his dream in the beginning. And she says, welcome. Now, this is a story, a movie that I've shown for years to my students in school. And I'm teaching the third eye to them and they get it. Oh my God, look, everything he saw. Yeah. So that was God speaking to him. And that's what they pick up. And I like to tell them, I said, I don't care what creed you in. Every human got this. And even if you're not spiritual, rich people, even though there's a lot of them is decadent, they reach into that gift. And they have to employ good, righteous people like us because some of us don't get that and we don't have our own.
Yeah.
So we go work for somebody else. We don't have a vision to plan. And I tell you, that's how I tell them, you got to own your own. You got to get off the job just over broke. But you tap into that. And so I want to conclude with this on this because this is so relevant. As a teacher, as a historian, I think in order for this to be relevant, it has to be practical. You have to use this in your life. And this is your future. Otherwise, your monuments just become something you talk about. But these monuments, all these things should be motivation, perspective to get us to the next level, where we're supposed to be in life. The final thing I want to say about this is by Professor King. In this book, again, Egypt, Child of Africa by Ivan Van Sertima. He says the outstanding works by the modern African scholar, Dr. Yusuf Ben Johanan, African Origins of Major Western Civilizations, Black Man of the Nile, and others, have revealed how much the world's major religions, including Christianity, have borrowed from the religions of Africa, particularly the ancient Egyptians or Kemetic people. Thus, it should come as no surprise to find in the Bible, Genesis chapter 32, verses 27 to 32, that it was at Peniel where Jacob, a mental slave, a neophyte, dwelling in ignorance, symbolic of the undeveloped unconscious or entrapped within the physical body, the contained mind, soul, or spirit, met the angel of God, the soul, the spirit, and wrestles, has a wrestling match. He ascended from his former state of lower consciousness and was transformed into Israel. which means liberated mind, soul, and spirit. And so what he was saying was, God would tell him he could do this, and he was saying, you can't do it, you can't do it, you can't see it. But he could do it. That's why you gotta watch what you tell your dreams to. And he wrestled, and God won. So now he was liberated. It was at Peniel that Jacob saw God face to face, and his life was preserved or renewed. Jacob called the name of this place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face. This pineal gland, like he said, Sister Farrakhan, is actually, in humans, a modified eye. In the lower life forms, such as amphibians and reptiles, western fence lizard, the pineal is present as a parietal or third eye on the top of the forehead. In the higher life forms, such as mammals, the pineal withdrew into the head, and what we see in this picture. Finally, the pineal hormones, melatonin and serotonin, operate as hormonal keys that unlock the door to the unconscious mind, dreams. Melatonin is known to initiate dreams by activating the locus coeruleus. It is known that ancient Egyptians did practice dream analysis and hypnosis. And I could go on and on. I won a basketball championship. I tell my kids this is a good motivator. It's also a good motivator for me when I'm down and out. And short story of it is, I saw something in the dream, didn't know what it was, but I was encouraged by it. And what it was, I was on the ground. All these people were jumping around me, and I didn't know why, but they were happy. They were celebrating. And at the time, I was in this basketball league, and we were the worst team in the league, but I was the exhorter, I was the encourager. And somehow we got to the championship. And the team we played was undefeated. They had blew us out. We had a 3-game series, and we won the first game. Second game, I got thrown out. I had a bad temper. Third game, we're down by 10 at halftime. The coach says, I don't care how you play the game, as long as you played your best. And I said, no, I don't want to hear that. We're going to win. Long story short, came to overtime. 3 seconds left, 10 seconds left. I had a nice jumper. They threw it to me. Big guy, 6'7", was on me. I couldn't shake him. I ended up on the line. The ball went out of bounds. It was their ball, and I was the GOAT. I was terrible. I was embarrassed. Looked like we were going to lose the game. They came down. They messed up. We got the ball. I had a terrible game. I was tired. Called a timeout. Got the rest. This time they said, we're not going to give it to you. We're going to give it to our leading scorer, who's on the other side. Point guard threw it to me. I threw it back to him. Instead of him going back to the other side, it's like the other team knew it was going to go on that side. It came back to me. And when I left my hands, I said, swish. That's all I saw, and I knew it was in. The next thing I knew, I ran the half court. Everybody was going crazy. They knocked me down. It was the vision I saw 6 months earlier. That inspires me. I had a little Puerto Rican girl one time said, oh, Mr. Howell, oh my God, that's so real. But that's real. That's the third eye.
I think the third eye is also connected to the human intuitive nature.
Yes.
That's the real sixth sense. I think what we're talking about is the sixth sense.
Yes.
When we talk about the third eye.
Yes.
You know, that's beyond the 5 regular senses.
Beyond,
you know?
Yeah.
Yes, it's beyond that, and it gives the other 5 senses their value. Because without the intuitive sense, the third eye, the other 5 don't serve you. They can't serve you because you're not allowing them to serve you like they should serve you.
Yes.
So I got a lot out of this. I'm reflecting on stuff, and it's good. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I like what was it your grandmother said that to you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, wait till your third eye come open.
Yeah,
You'll see. In other words, she look at me, shake her finger, say, "You'll see." Wait till that third eye come open.
I remember when we was little, we get mad and say, kick your butt all the way back to Timbuktu. We ain't know what we were talking about.
Yeah.
I hope, we can talk about that one day. The great
Yeah.
Songhai Empire, Timbuktu and
Yeah.
all of that.
I appreciate the class today, and it gave me a little bit more. It added to what I understood. It enhanced it. I'll put it that way. A lot more. Yeah,
Thank you.
enhanced it, Peter. Thank you.
And so the remaining time, I want to do the tech-con. So go a little bit into this. And so you see this when you go to Washington Monument.
Yeah.
Everybody say, oh, this is great, this and that. Guess what? It's the exact replica of the tech-con in Kemet. And there were 64 of these. There's only 2 left in Kemet today. Dr. Browder tells us where they are today. Give me a second. I got kind of excited here. I lost pages where I can find this information. Just give me a second. So he says that they're scattered all throughout the world. There's a couple in Central Park. There's one in France. There's one in the Vatican. And there's one in France, I believe. And this, among other things, was stolen out of Kemet. And other people have taken credit for it. So here it is. During the reign of Thutmose III, 1450 before the Christian era, 2 tekhenae were erected at the entrance of the temple of Ra at Helopas. They were moved to Alexandria around 10 before the Christian era by the Romans, and in the 1870s, they were given as gifts to the United States and Great Britain. One now stands in Central Park in New York City, and the other was erected along the Thames River in London. Currently, there are 13 tekhenae in Rome, including one which stands in St. Peter's Square in the Vatican. Tekhenae may also be found in Turkey, Germany, and many other locations throughout the world. So the first usage of the tekhenae was the resurrected power trying to put back a Tsar. We needed that. The second one was, it was associated with the Bennu bird, which is when the Greeks took over, they took this legend. The Bennu bird was said to be self-regenerating, and like its namesake, the phoenix, it would live for 500 years, consume itself in a ball of flames, and later arise from the ashes to live for another 500 years. 3, it was also believed that the tekhenae were meant to resemble the rays of the sun. Oftentimes, the perennial capstones of the tekhenae were covered with gold or silver, or some combination of the 2 metals, in order to reflect the light of the sun. 2 tekhenae, number 4, were often flanked by the entrances to temples, and their presence was representative of the complementary nature aspects of the creative aspects of God, male and female. And finally, it was, there's 2 more things for it. It was also used for telling time. The structures were also used as timekeeping devices, and the length of their shadow was measured to determine the time of day. And lastly, these early sundials also played a key role in ascertaining the precise moments of the solstice and the equinox. So that is this piece right here. I was thinking doing the research on this. I know sometimes when I'm in a graveyard cemetery, I see a lot of these. And pretty interesting. Next thing I want to get in before we dismiss, I think we got 10 minutes. Well, how many minutes I got, sister? 15, 20? I want to talk about the pyramids, which everyone knows about, and enhance our information, our wisdom and knowledge on the pyramids. And again, the pyramids, as I stated before, everything in Kemet is all integrated. The art, the culture, the science, the math, the spirituality, it all comes together. And you really can't explain one without the other, particularly with the pyramids. See, thousands of years after the architects are dead and forgotten, the structures they created live on and tell the story of the entire civilization. The philosophy of a nation is often reflected in its architecture. Nowhere is this statement more evident than in Kemet. Before the Masjidun-Nur, hieroglyphics, that's the Greek word, hieroglyphics. Masjidun-Nur means words of God, positive words. They were teaching on that. There was a rap movement in Southern California for 10 years. We didn't know about it on the East Coast. Initiated by a sister who was heavily involved in Kemetic spirituality. And she said, y'all can rap, but you can't curse. You got to use the Masjidun-Nur. And she explained how that's positive words. Before the Masjidun-Nur, hieroglyphics were deciphered, and hundreds of years before the complexities of science, religion, and philosophy of Kemet were known, her pyramids commanded the respect and admiration of millions of awestruck visitors. Numerous questions have been asked as to why and how these monuments were built. Many of these questions remain unanswered to this very day. In archaeology, whenever a temple or ancient monument is aligned to a specific rising or setting position of the sun, moon, or other heavenly body, that site is usually referred to as an observatory or solar or lunar structure. From this perspective, practically every pyramid in the Nile Valley serves some astronomical purpose. These ancient buildings were designed not only to accommodate the physical needs of the people, they were also astronomically oriented to facilitate their spiritual needs as well. Pyramids were designed to create a sense of grandeur and to inspire greater faith within the priests and the general population. The harmonic proportion of the structure, its orientation to celestial bodies, and the location of the sacred altar, quote, the Holy of Holies, were all part of the design to create an environment where the spirit of a specific attribute or creativity of God would dwell. Every component within the pyramid, the soaring height of the columns, the number of columns, the clerestory, windows, the positioning of the walls, the paintings and carvings on the walls, all reflected an intense desire to establish a sacred place for a dialogue between the human form and its spiritual essence. I want to show you a pyramid and how Kemetic people integrated art, science, agriculture with the spiritual and in our daily life. Everybody see that? See that? That's the form of a pyramid. At the beginning is the Kemper beetle. Every morning, the Kemper beetle wakes up and ascends, just like we do. It's the beginning of the day. It's Kemper, it's awakening. And then, as we proceed through the day, we arrive at high noon, the highest part of the day, which represents the strongest force of God, his energy that gives life and light, and they call that Ra. And then as man goes throughout the day, he goes to rest where the sun actually goes away or sleeps and night comes. And he is known as Amen. So at the end of your prayers, when you hear Amen, that's what we're referring to, the end of the day. And then that each day, we begin this solstice again. Kempra, Ra, Amen.
And what we saying here is that the morning time is the highest point of energy
Yeah.
for spirituality, or
Everything.
what? What are you saying? For everything. Okay.
Integrated, it's the essence of everything. And that's
Okay.
why I was saying your daily life. Try to incorporate what we do during the day. And then as we move, we go to the high point of noon, which is the highest force of God, that the sun, the energy. And then you go descend down, you go to rest. And that's Amen. So Amen represents completion. And then you go to the next day.
Oh, okay.
So they integrate it all. You know, there's a lot of deep things in the pyramid. Of course, just like anything else, you learn more as you study it, particularly the pyramid. I wanted to share something with you from a man by the name of Anthony West. Well, let me give you another meaning of the pyramids. Doing the research, we found out it's also called the Mer, M-E-R. And the office here says the four-sided triangle, solid triangle structure built on the geometric principle used to provide a safe and secure resting place for the dead while waiting to enter the next world. Pyramids were also used for temples, calendars, sundials, attractors, and centers of electromagnetic energies. Symbolizes natural balance, harmony, and triads in life. So here's what that looks like. See the eye again. I want to just park here for a minute. The author says the electromagnetic energies. I had a book once. This was like, I'm going to say about 20 years ago. I'm teaching 4th grade. A brother gives me this book on the pyramids. I read it and they say, you can create, you can recreate, you can bring things back to life electronically, magnetically. And so the book tells me, and I do this experiment with my 4th graders. Get a cardboard box, fold them into pyramids. Get a dull blade, razor blade. Put it under the cardboard pyramid box. The next day, that blade will be sharp. And I think we did about maybe 5 to 7 of them. Overnight, the next day, I had a lot of hair back then on my face. So I had a lot of old blades that were dull. Some were rusted. The next day, they were recharged. And so there was a magnetic force generated by the pyramid, the shape, the structure, that electrically brought these blades back to life. Unfortunately, I lost the book because they had a whole lot of experiments, and to this day, I can't find that book. But I know what I got a glimpse of that electro magnetic energy from the pyramids. And then you have the mummification process that was done. And I want to share with you how that happens today, just like they stole the Tekana. Well, the Europeans actually were eating mummies and taking the substance of them and profiting from what was in the mummies in Europe. So let me read this to you. 200 years, and this is from my brother. Oh, let me give him credit. Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization, Anthony Browder. So he says, 200 years before West Africans were enslaved and sold in the West, the bodies of their Nile Valley ancestors were being marketed and distributed throughout Europe. Illiterate Arab villagers often used mummy cases for firewood and sold the corpses for medicinal purposes. Since the 12th century, mummy had been described as medicine for a variety of illnesses ranging from epilepsy to ulcers. The word mummy derived from the Persian word mumia, mumaja in Arabic. Let me say it again, mumija in Arabic, and is a term which means pitch or bitumen. Bitumen was one of the substances used by the people of Kemet in the ancient embalming process. Bitumen was similar in appearance to pissa salt, which had long been regarded as a cure for nausea, cuts, bruises, and a variety of other ailments. During the times when pissa salt was in short supply, mummies were used as a convenient substitute. Before long, businesses were established in Cairo and Alexandria where mummified human flesh was being packaged and exported throughout Western Europe. He concludes by saying, he tells us about a man named John Sanderson. He spent a year in Egypt from 1585 to 1586 and purchased more than 600 pounds of mummified flesh, which he exported to England and sold for a substantial profit. It was not uncommon for some individuals to create artificial mummy by slicing the flesh off of recently deceased corpses and packing it in asphalt for several months in an attempt to duplicate the real thing. During the European Renaissance, many artists added powdered mummy to their paints with the hope that it would prevent their pictures from cracking with age. And as recently as 20 years ago, it was reported that ground mummy could be purchased for $40 an ounce at a pharmacy in New York City. So that's something else they stole from us and shows you the genius of how we were. And I guess the legend starts with a set, starting that process with her husband, the king of Kemet, Asar, the mummification process.
So, Brother Keith.
Yes.
Can we continue next week, maybe?
I sure. I got 4 more subjects. I didn't know how. I mean, I just felt the energy from y'all. I wasn't going to go into. Yeah, definitely. I mean, if y'all want me, yeah.
Okay, so we can end today. We did an hour, and inshallah, we can continue next week at 2.
Sure, and I'll talk about. I'm going to talk about the Step Pyramid, the Great Pyramids, the Ankh, and Hermakit, which y'all know is the Great Sphinx, but it's 2 different things. Great Sphinx was Greek. It's an evil woman. They didn't think highly of women in Greece, so she's evil. But Hermakit, which is Heru, Horus on the horizon, is a great person. And I appreciate y'all. Thank you. Hope y'all got something.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right.
Y'all have a blessed day now.
Everybody